everyone. Welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. I'm Brian Doyle.
Tim McNeil.
And we have no Rob Rogers today.
We have no third.
So Rob is out fighting the good fight. We'd love to dog him, but I think Timmy will say what he's dealing with right now is not something either one of us would want to have to contend with today.
No. Old crotchety salespeople that don't understand how to make the proper exit. Let's put it that way.
So, we today, where we would normally rip Rob up a little bit for not being on here with us, I think we'll be kind and gentle and say sorry, Rob.
Very nice.
Yeah.
But as always, I always like to say nobody's really here to see me and Tim, and certainly never here to see Rob. See, I couldn't keep it to myself for too long, Tim. But they're here for our guest, and I want to welcome Brian Hoppe to our call today. He's an MSP coach that many of you might be familiar with in the industry, and he's going to talk to us a little bit today about his backstory and how he went from being an MSP to being a business coach for MSPs. So, Brian, welcome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys having me on. Excited for the conversation.
So, we'd love to kick things off first with learning a little bit more about you. Maybe you can tell us, a little bit about your backstory. Have you always been in the MSP space? And if not, how did you end up here?
Yeah, right. It's a great question. A long journey. I actually started in the MSP space about 20 years ago, before most of us called it MSP. Really started out in support, break fix services and that kind of a thing. Was started with one other person, kind of grew a company that I didn't own, and that none of us who actually worked in it owned. It was owned by a family office over a number of years. Grew that from just a couple of people to over 45 at the time. And somewhere in there we transitioned kind of probably in 2007 or so, from break fix services over to full managed services. And so I guess you could say that's when I actually became an MSP. But yeah, I've been in the industry my entire career, pretty much, with few exceptions. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff in there, but long story short, I became an MSP owner in 2016 or thereabouts, and bought into a company, ran that company, bought another company in that process, integrated those two, and ended up exiting much before I thought I would, in 2021. Circumstances became the right thing, and for me to exit sold that to private equity. And like it seems like a lot of owners do, afterwards, I worked for the buyer for about a year, and then transitioned out of that. So kind of my next natural I guess the next natural step for me was to become a business coach, and a lot of reasoning behind that, and what that it all entails. But yeah, so now I am a coach, and I would call it an executive coach for MSPs, and MSPs specifically. And so that's what I'm currently up to right now. We can dive into any of that stuff that you guys think would be interesting to go to.
So there's a lot of moving parts there, but
yeah, right.
So for everybody out there listening, Brian and I kind of know each other from a former life. Before he got acquired, they were actually a client of ours for a period of time, and we actually managed one of their salespeople. So
Yes.
I invited him on because, I mean, look, everybody is interested in knowing what that process is like. And you said it took up to a year, or you were in contact up to a year before you actually did exit out. And I'm curious to see, how it went compared to how you thought it would go.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good one. I think I think the process probably lasted, from first conversation to close, probably around 8 months. Um,
Okay.
and what I would say about that is I expected it to be much less, even though I've done acquisitions in the past on
Yeah.
on the buy side predominantly. And usually those, it ends up like, okay, maybe it takes 4, 5, 6 months to get to that point, but this one definitely took a little bit longer. And yeah, it was definitely something that, at the end of it, I was like, okay, I definitely need probably at least a month off, vacation. And that obviously never happens. That didn't happen, but yeah, definitely a very intense process. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, those things can when you start opening up the books to the level you have to there, it's there's no secrets, right? And that's a big part of the due diligence process. 8 months, it's like on the one hand, it sounds like a long time, and certainly when you're living it, it's a long time, but that
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
seems to be right in the time frame we hear often, especially when PE is involved, from introduction to closing of the deal. And it's a little bit different animal than when two friendlies partner up, decide to merge, and and go build that next level of company. It's definitely seems like
Right.
there's a lot more that gets investigated during that process. Maybe
Sure.
if you're willing to share, where were some of the stall points? Like, what were some of the things that might have caused the conversation to slow down a little bit in your transaction?
Sure. Yeah, I think it was it was less probably on the on the front end and more on the back end of the diligence process. So I was always of the mind that I was like, hey, I'm not planning on selling my business for another probably 5 years, but I want to keep it I want to keep it sellable.
Yeah.
Whenever that is, we'll be ready, right? And so that was always my philosophy, was like, hey, let's have clean books, let's make sure that we've got documentation on everything, all the stuff that I know that somebody's going to ask for whenever we go to sell. And so it was much less on the information gathering, financials, even quality of earnings, which any private equity is going to do a full
Mhm.
quality of earnings. That stuff was pretty quick, because I mean, everything you have to have to gather and all that kind of stuff. And then so probably more so on the legal side is probably where it kind of stalled more.
Yep.
And I think it's part of it was because they were working multiple deals at the same time, and so they've got you've got you've got your legal team, your accounting team, and everybody trying to work on a bunch of stuff. And so I would probably say the more of the choke point was in kind of the legal side of things and just actually getting it over the finish line. Even after everything had been negotiated and everything was done, it's just like, okay, let's get the paperwork together. Let's get it, all those things. Of course, there were a couple curveballs there, right at the end, even up to the last day. There's always something that happens, and it's like, oh my gosh, is this gonna work? And then, but yeah, so I would say it's probably more on the backside, where and just stuff that's not really necessarily anybody's fault, or even in anybody's control. Is just how the deal flows once you get to that point. So
Yeah.
But those are great points to bring up, because I think a lot of first time M&A businesses that get involved in an M&A process don't understand that just sometimes the true paperwork, legal coordination of those outsourced teams that are part of that process, their accounting teams, their legal teams, things like that, just take the time they take. And I've seen, more than one MSP get very concerned that there was something potentially going to disrupt the deal, or this was where things were going to take a dark turn, when in truth it just was, hey, the lawyers had 15 days worth of caseload in front of us, so to speak, before they could come into our paperwork.
Yep. Yep.
exactly,
Just takes
exactly.
time. Takes time.
So
That happens a lot. Yeah, happens a lot for sure.
So you mentioned a little bit that it was a little bit earlier than what you were planning. Was it just one of those opportunities that definitely felt like it was so good that you had to take it now, or it might not come back around again, or was there anything else that was driving your decision to exit at that point?
Yeah, I think I think for me, it was more just a conversation got started. So I had a business, kind of a silent business partner, and the conversation got started that kind of outside of my knowledge, I guess. At the very beginning, it was so he was maybe approached by somebody, and it was like, huh, it just starts you to thinking, right?
Yep.
And it's
Yeah.
like, no, we're not ready. We've got so much more that we can do with this. I want to be double the size before we even think about this. And then you start thinking about it, and it's like, well, wouldn't it be good to take some chips off the table? Well, wouldn't it be good to. And then it's like, and then you start thinking in your head. I mean, at least for me, this is my thought process. I start thinking in my head, okay, what would life be like if this deal happened, and what would I be willing to exit for, and what wouldn't I be willing to exit for,
Mhm.
dollars and cents wise, or after the sale wise, like what would that look like? So so in some ways your brain just starts going to a place where it's like, okay, this could actually be pretty good. And so I would say that it was just kind of like this process that just evolved, and there was definitely a point where it was like, okay, if I can't get this number, then I'm not going to do it.
Mhm.
And then it becomes a point where, oh, maybe I can actually get this number, which is even better than I thought, because
Yeah.
Yep.
valuations are looking really good right now.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, now it starts to become real in your mind, and then it's like, okay, let's get this thing done. I mean, that was kind of probably how it went in my head at the time. And so somewhat unexpected, but also it's like, okay, I can really see where this could be a great thing. So yeah, that I
Yeah.
think that hopefully
Perfect.
that answers your question.
Yeah,
No, definitely.
definitely. Definitely. Yeah. So you took, you've bought some companies, or you've acquired some companies, you've been acquired. And I know
Yeah.
you're kind of out there, now looking to work with MSPs or just companies in more of a business coach format. And I'm
Hmm.
curious to see kind of what you're looking to do now, or what your next venture is, how you're doing it, um,
Hmm.
what makes you different, things like that.
Yeah, that's great. I'm happy to talk about that. I'm actually probably one of the so I'll give two things that were kind of pivotal for me in my growth when I was working for somebody else in the MSP industry, and as an MSP executive. Two things that really made a huge difference. One was joining a peer group. That was a huge step in my growth as a as an MSP leader. The second thing, and probably the most transformational for me, was when I got my first coach. And just going through the coaching process, which is, it encompasses a lot of different things. It could be, for us at the time, we were having, among our leadership team, having a lot of problem with communication. I guess kind of organizing, organizing ourselves in such a way that we could really make ourselves successful. Leadership, developing our own leadership, as well as a level of leadership inside the team. All of those kind of things that just kind of, coaching for me really unlocked something inside of me and for our business, kind of helping us go from bottom quartile performance to best in class performance as an MSP.
Mhm.
So the combination of those two things, coaching and peer groups especially, was just a huge thing for me. So
Yeah.
all that as a preface to why I'm why I'm doing coaching now. I think it's just a really important piece of the puzzle. I think every MSP, given the effect it had on me, I think every MSP should have a peer group and a coach. And so
You hear that over
so
and
I'm
over.
Oh my God, the amount of
there you
times.
go.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
that's
yeah,
awesome.
constant. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah. And so And I think so for me, as far as what I do, I'm really focused on the individual as a leader. So generally speaking, that's going to be the MSP owner.
Mhm.
And what do they need as an individual and as a leader in their company to take things to the next level? Um, so that could be that could be they need help developing the leadership team. It could be they need help with strategy. It could be that they need help with work-life balance, or how do I stop being the single point of failure inside my company where everything has to go through me in order for anything to get done
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I don't want to work 70 hours a week anymore. All and so it's relatively individualized, based on the person and that kind of thing. But that's what I'm focused on, is working with MSPs to get what they want out of their business.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's helping them discover what they want to get out of their business in the first place. So yeah, that's kind of the main part of what I'm doing currently.
Yeah, very cool. And
So
that's,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead. Go
So if
ahead.
I'm an MSP and I'm coming in as as a coaching prospect to you, or coming into your coaching program, what are steps I can do to prepare for my first journey with a coach? Because a big question a lot of MSPs talk to is, am I really ready for a coach? Yet, as Tim already alluded to, everybody we talked to that once they got into a coach or peer group said it was transformational. So maybe what advice could you say to a first-time MSP who's thinking about coming into the coaching journey? What should they be asking themselves, and what should they be prepared to do as they enter into that arrangement?
That's a great question. So I think it's a question of how coachable am I? Do I think that I already have all the answers, and therefore,
Yeah.
I don't really, need, or I'm not willing to accept feedback, or I'm not willing to change the way that I think. Obviously, the opposite of that, being coachable, is really just about how much do I want to grow, how much am I willing to learn, how much am I willing to change, and accept feedback and see feedback as a gift, as opposed to a criticism. And be open to, I would say, changing your mind. And because a lot of what coaching is yeah, is just unlocking something that you probably already know, but you've yet to realize and actually put into practice. So a lot of the coaching process is really good questions, and probing into some areas that maybe you haven't looked at in the past, places that are blind spots, perhaps, where a coach can help you get feedback from other people in your organization that they might not share directly with you, that you can hopefully help share, and probably make some changes to what you're doing as a leader. um and then yeah, and then it's an ongoing conversation of how do we improve you as a person and as a leader? How do we improve your business? How do we build your leadership team? How do we improve your profitability? And then, of course, depending on the goals of the MSP, how do we get you ready for exit? And what are the things that we need to do to make sure that when that time comes, you're ready to go? And so it could be a combination of all those things. But yeah, to go back to answering your question, I think a good question would be, how coachable am I, and how willing am I to learn and listen and adjust and realize that a lot of the times the problem is me, not somebody
Yep.
Yep.
else.
Yep. Yep.
So that's another piece of it too. So
No, that is
It's,
a
so
big one.
yeah, I was going to say, it's funny you say that. So, I mean, look, you said a lot of great things there, but to me, everything, I was about to bring it back to exactly what you just said. Like, how coachable are you? The amount of
mhm,
people out there that join a peer, and like Rob and I are in a peer group, and we've got a business coach. I know Brian's got a business coach.
mhm,
If you're not open to change, then you might as well not even do it, right? And
right.
if
Mhm,
you've got to be vulnerable. You've got to be willing to be vulnerable. and understand that being vulnerable is not necessarily a weakness. It can be it can actually be a really huge strong suit. It just can be.
Absolutely.
There's two types of
Absolutely.
personalities we encounter in technology all the time, right? The guy that thinks they know it all. And then the guy that realizes every day we're getting dumber because we find out how much more there is in the technology landscape to learn, right? And if you can accept that as part of your life, you're probably ready for a coach.
Yeah.
There you go. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's always what I try to uncover is, and in kind of the initial call is, hey, how coachable are you? I'm at a point where I'm not, I don't want to do anything that's not fun. Right.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have fun or we're not going to do it. So if somebody's not coachable, I'm probably going to pick that out pretty quickly in that conversation and say, hey, maybe we need to come back to this later down the road when you feel like you're ready. Because I've got to, there's too much going on to not have fun doing it. So that's the other piece of it as well.
I think Tim would agree with that too. There's nothing worse in the world of coaching, consulting, those kind of things, that when you're trying to lay out a plan for them to execute on for their benefit, and they don't take those steps, they don't do the work, they come back and just go, tell me more of how we could just make it bigger, better, faster, without doing any effort. Right. And if you find yourself at that role where you can't take on the work that goes with a coach, probably a little premature too.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
So Brian, tell people where they can find you. So, what are some of the best ways to get in touch with you? And I always say this, we will be posting up your LinkedIn profile with the episode, but how should somebody that's looking for some support right now reach out to you?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. So LinkedIn is probably where I'm most active online. And then obviously I've got a website. It's brianhoppe.com. So BrianHoppe.com. You can find me there as well. And I'm always on my LinkedIn messages as well as email. So absolutely feel free to reach out. I'd love to have a conversation.
Awesome. So Tim, you going to take us home in lieu of Rob?
Yeah,
or would
I'll
you like
see
me
if I
to
can do it. Usually Rob does this, so we'll see how this goes. Anyways, Brian, it was really good having you on. It's been good reconnecting over the last, I guess, few weeks, almost month at this point. For anybody out, for anybody out there who's interested in listening to MSP Business School, we're on all the platforms you would ever want to be, up to and including YouTube. I guess before we go anywhere, I just want to make sure, Brian, do you have any last thoughts or questions? Or I guess either Brian? Got two.
From my seat, I'm good. I just want to thank you for joining us, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys as well. This has been really fun. I love chatting with people in the industry, and of course everybody loves talking about themselves, right? So this has been great.
It's the easy part.
Well, hey, really appreciate you sharing your story with our listeners today, giving them a sense of, what you went through. And certainly if you're an MSP that's thinking about the exit, thinking about how to grow your business, thinking about how to continue moving things forward, reach out to Brian at one of the ways that he said today, his website, brianhoppe.com, via LinkedIn or any of those messages, and see how we can help.
Absolutely.
All right, Brian. Well,
guys,
appreciate you coming on.
And we'll see you again next.
Yeah. Have a great day.
Thanks, you guys.